Hello, friends. Welcome back to the From One Young Soul to Another talk through series. I don't know what to call it, but took a good, 6 weeks off from this, just kind of focusing on some other stuff. So, if you haven't watched anything up to this point, there's a playlist. I'll go ahead and put it in the description so you can go and get caught up on the book to this point. And also, here's the book on Amazon. Link in the description, as it is with every video, because, I am not ashamed to say that I relentlessly self promote myself. So, we are, I believe, at chapter 5 now, which I think this chapter 6, sorry. So, we have 4 chapters now, including this one. Overthinking is Personal Enslavement is the title of this chapter. And I think this is where the book honestly starts to get good, because this is more focused on improvement. I would say the first, well, especially the first 3 chapters are like kind of a baseline of the reasons I wrote the book basically and the stuff I was struggling through last year. And then chapter 4, it really starts to talk more about moving on from that stuff and improving yourself and the types of things that I use to improve myself. And this chapter, I don't even know what I want to say is the best chapter or the most important. I think it's different for everyone. But I think this is a very important chapter because the mind is everything. And I talk about it a lot. I'm going to continue to talk about it a lot. But everything we get in our life, good or bad, is basically a result of what we think about, what we do, and all of our actions come from the mind, unless they're kind of spur of the moment. But yeah, so this is an important chapter, and this, I think, to really improve your happiness, I think overcoming your mind, or at least reining it in, is the most important thing you can do. Because again, everything we have, everything we want, comes from our mind. The mind is a very powerful machine that can propel us forward, but it's also strong enough to hold us down if we let it. So it's a very important thing to overcome, and that's why I entitled it "Overthinking is Personal Enslavement," because over analyzing things and overthinking things and digging way too deep into stuff that doesn't need to be dug into, it really keeps you in chains. Like it holds you down to a point where you can't move forward, and it's almost like you become a zombie to your thoughts, and you're just never able to get to where you want because you're stuck because of your mind. And so of course, as I discuss a lot, everything in this book builds off of the first chapter with the girl I liked, and that was where the negative thoughts were coming from. And that's why I spent a significant portion of an entire year basically in my feelings. And that's just a great example of what the mind can do. I was solely stuck in that place because of the way I was thinking. So that's why it's such an important thing to get past is your negative thinking. So, I started off talking about how I was stuck in the same place, how I would sit around and think about the same things for months at a time, and it didn't move me forward at all. It just kept me exactly in the same place. Didn't help me figure anything out. All that thinking didn't help me figure anything out. That's the important thing to learn, is thinking doesn't, it can help you, but if you constantly turn over the same things, you're not going to get anywhere. And at some point in this, I just read a little bit of it. Oh yeah, here it is. Reading back to this, I got a little bit of confidence because I'm like, I think I wrote this chapter incredibly well, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I said, my mind became a treadmill of sad thoughts, and that's really what it was. Like the same thoughts just kept coming and going. My mind was constantly running with these sad thoughts, and I was stuck on that treadmill. Like, I wasn't moving forward. I was just in that same place, just going back to the same things. So I wanted to read a couple things from this that I think, because I want to make this video series a little bit of a behind the scenes and maybe add some additional context to the stuff I wrote. But in some cases, I think everything I wrote was said it all. And, I do have more experience now in the 4 months since publishing this book that can help you move on from your thoughts and control all that. But I think honestly, a lot of the stuff in this book still holds up. And for me personally, I think it's gonna work for anyone, and that's my goal, is to help people, obviously. But so I just want to read some things real quick. So the first step to ridding yourself of these thoughts is to actually address that they are happening. Your mind is constantly going and it won't be stopped unless you make an effort to stop it. It's very easy to let it run its mouth all day because you just become used to it. Once you start viewing your thoughts from more of an outside perspective, it becomes easier to mute those inner comments. Once you start confronting your thoughts, ask yourself, is this a thought worth acknowledging? Is this something I can control? For me, the answers to both of those questions were no. And that was obviously in response to the things I was thinking about last summer. So I just read this, I'm like, man, that's exactly how I would explain it today still. That your mind never stops going. And the more you allow those negative thoughts to come in and out, they're just constantly going to be there, especially if you don't address them, if you don't acknowledge that they're there, if you don't recognize that they're there, then it's just going to seem normal to you, and you're going to have no reason to change it. So I think the most important thing to do is recognize those negative thoughts and address that they're there, and don't necessarily think that they're bad. Just don't acknowledge them. Just say, well, acknowledge them, but don't think that that's the way you think. Don't think that that's necessarily the 100% truth, because it's coming from your mind. And I think that's why it's so easy to fall into this cycle of, identifying yourself with what you think about, because you're the only person that's talking to yourself all day. Like, you're the only person that is analyzing things and thinking about things, and that inner voice in your head is, that's your best friend almost. And you don't want to think that your best friend is wrong or stupid, but it is. That's really what it comes down to. Like, that voice in your head is not there to help you. It can help you if you get into a more positive thinking cycle, and you start confronting the negative thoughts and start thinking more positively, start actively thinking positively, and not just letting your brain feed you what you think. Like, actually you can use your brain to your advantage. Like, it's not always going to just feed you things. You can actually put things into it, and it'll continue to spit those things out. And I didn't really talk about manifestation in this book much, and in my next book I will more. But that's another thing that, because see, with this book I didn't have a ton of experience with manifestation. Now I have a little bit more, where I've actually been able to see my positive thinking spitting out like physical, tangible evidence of those thoughts in the real world, where I've been attracting good things because I'm thinking good things and I'm doing good things. And that's something I'll talk about. I talked about on this channel already, but that's something I'll continue to write about and will be in my next book. That the way you think doesn't only help you become happier, like on a day-to-day basis, but it actually can reward you in a physical, tangible sense. So it's just such an easy thing to get into. And again, it takes time, and I'm not perfect with this. I still think negatively a lot, but I'm not a lot, but I still think negatively on occasion. But I'm just better at confronting those and kind of flipping the script on it and just saying, nope, we're going to stop this, and we're going to start thinking better. So it's a really good thing to get into, and I think it's necessary for you to get to where you want. You got to think positively, and that's going to pay off. So I talk a lot in this chapter about The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which this was the book that changed everything for me. This was the book that taught me all the stuff I wrote about, that, you know, you can separate yourself from your mind, and that what we really are is that kind of spiritual seed inside of us, that we have no control over. It was just implanted in us upon birth, or even before that, depending on what you believe in. But that's really who we are, and no matter what happens on Earth, that's not going to change. But we can still tap into that on Earth and use it to our advantage, and that's what's going to make us happiest, because that's our true self. That's our inner being that we should really be relying on for our actions. And so Eckhart Tolle talks about that a lot. He talks about a lot about the ego, which I've made videos on the ego too. I didn't talk a ton about it in this book because ever since then I've learned so much more about the ego, and I'm going to put that in my next book too, because I think it's massive. Being able to control your ego, which the ego is your mind. So, you know, I talked about it, but just not as in depth as I would today, about how, you know, the ego is another thing we need to rein in, because it's not necessarily there to help us all the time. But I wanted to read another thing from, and this was from The Power of Now that I put in the book. So, all cravings are the mind seeking salvation or fulfillment in external things, and in the future as a substitute for the joy of being. As long as I am my mind, I am those cravings, those needs, wants, attachments, and aversions, and apart from them there is no I, except as a mere possibility, an unfulfilled potential, a seed that has not yet sprouted. And this is something he talks about a lot. And I have so many things I want to read right now, and so many things I am reading, but I want to read The Power of Now again, because it's a book that you could probably read a million times and always miss something. And I've only read it once. And just going back through the Kindle notes I made, I realized that there's a lot of stuff I already kind of forgot. So I want to go back through it, because it's seriously, like, it'll be the best. I don't even know how much it costs. It'll be the best, however, $10, $15 you ever spend, I think, because it really helps you fix a lot of these issues. So, an important thing he talks about in the book is, I mean, it's called The Power of Now, so living in the now. And he talks a lot about how, you know, some of the depression we face nowadays comes from our past, and either the things we did do in our past or the things we didn't do in our past. And how a lot of people, and really probably most people in some small ways at least, let it hold them down because they're dragged down by their past. And a lot of the anxiety we have is looking forward to the future, and kind of pushing our joy back into the future. Now, no pun intended, but push our joy into the future, and kind of willingly suffer now because we think it'll help us in the future. And in some ways that's true. I mean, I've talked about delayed gratification a lot, which is basically the art of, you know, sacrificing things now for the betterment of the future. But you don't have, but that's like an example of that is the creative side of the world, like YouTube, writing, where I'm spending a lot of time right now putting things into the world, and I'm not really getting a monetary return on it. I am willingly spending my time to not get something in return now, basically. In and I'm working towards, you know, getting those things in the future. So, I mean, I could be spending all my time right now working a job that pays me now, right? And that's kind of instant gratification. But in the long term, I'm going to benefit more from spending this time doing these types of things, I believe, because I think it'll have greater returns in the future. But at the same time, the sacrifices I'm making now aren't making me sad. Like, that's what he talks about with, you know, pushing all our things into the future, is a lot of us will suffer now, whether it's with a job or a relationship, because we think that putting this time and effort in will eventually pay off for us. but we might not necessarily know how it will pay off. We don't know for sure that it will. Which of course we don't know for sure that anything will work out in our favor, at least the way we intend it. But we have an idea, and a lot of people will just willingly suffer now because they think it'll pay off in the future, but it won't always. So I think it's important to kind of define and figure out, what do you actually want from the thing you're suffering from now to pay in the future. So, and we identify with these a lot. Like he talks about, I am those or as long as I am my mind, I am those cravings, needs, wants, attachments, and aversions. And without those things, I'm just potential. And that's exactly what it is. Like your mind, continues to want things, and it's never really satisfied until it has those things. And once it has those things, it's going to want different things. So you'll never really be happy if you continually live in a cycle of wanting or craving or desiring anything. And that's where gratitude comes in, and just kind of recognizing that, what I have now is great. It's plenty. I'm, happy. I'm not hungry. I'm healthy. And if I'm not completely healthy, at least I'm living. There's always something to be grateful for. I mean, waking up every day is something that not everyone has the ability to do. I mean, a lot of people everyone gets to a point where it's their last day waking up. And the fact that you woke up today means you weren't one of those people. So that's something to be grateful for. You have a choice when you wake up to, live for the people that aren't here anymore and take advantage of the life we have. And that's all. And wanting things isn't bad. Like wanting good things for our future isn't bad. But at the same time, you can be happy without those things. You don't have to have what you desire. You can't let those desires hold you down if you don't have them. Just be happy with what you have now. And that's basically the chapter. Just and I didn't go so in depth with it. And again, this is something I can talk about forever. I didn't write as much as I would now, and that's why I'm going to continue to write about it. But read my chapter, of course, and then read The Power of Now, because I think that's for me, that's where I really started to figure some stuff out and realize that I am not the things I don't have, and I don't have to be, and I am not my thoughts. I am the person that observes those thoughts. So just start working on that if you haven't already. If you feel unhappy, start, if you feel like you're being too negative, maybe start, really analyzing your thoughts and see what comes to you, and start turning the tide a little bit. Like if you see someone in public that's different from you, that you would maybe usually judge, like maybe don't judge them. Just realize like that person's being true to themselves, and I wouldn't want someone to judge me for being true to myself, so I'm not going to do that. And maybe instead of kind of giving them a weird look, like maybe give them a smile and show them that you see them as a fellow human being that's living their truth, if you will. And do that for yourself too. Don't be scared. And we're gonna get into this in the next chapter with comparison, but don't hold your true self in. Like show it to the world, and don't be scared. And that's that. So buy my book, but if you don't want to, then I'll continue to upload videos. And I think I'm gonna film the rest of this in a day because I'm so behind. So if you see this beautiful Bob Ross shirt of him painting, I believe, our beautiful Milky Way galaxy, then if you continue to see this shirt, then just realize that this was all filmed today. So have a beautiful day. Read my book or watch my videos or do something that makes you happy otherwise, and have a beautiful day.